A silent mafia heiress pointed at a tired waitress and whispered one word that should have been impossible. Mama. In a candlelit New Orleans restaurant where powerful men spoke in low voices and every glass of wine felt like a secret little Ivy Vale had never said a single word. Not to doctors, not to nannies, not even to her father, Roman Vale, the most feared man on the Gulf Coast. But when waitress Mara Ellison stepped into the room with rain on her shoes and exhaustion in her eyes, the child reached for her like she had found home. This is not just a love story. It is about grief, danger, buried truth, and the strange way a broken child can recognize safety before anyone else does. Stay until the end, because one word is about to expose a murder. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. That one word did not stay inside the Marini room. It followed Mara Ellison through the kitchen doors, past the cooks who suddenly stopped shouting, past the dishwashers who pretended not to stare, past the narrow hallway that smelled like lemon cleaner hot oil and old brick soaked with rain. It followed her out into the alley behind the restaurant where New Orleans breathed wet and heavy under a midnight storm. Mama. Mara stood beneath a flickering security light with Roman Vale's black card pressed between her fingers. The card was simple enough to look harmless. No company name, no title, no gold letters, just a phone number printed in clean black ink. Men like Roman Vale did not need decoration. Power had already introduced him. Rain ticked against the metal awning over her head. Somewhere beyond the alley, a saxophone cried through the French Quarter like it was mourning someone nobody had buried yet. Mara looked down at the card again, then at the hand Ivy had grabbed with both small fingers. Lavender. It was faint, almost gone beneath the restaurant soap and rainwater, but she knew it. That soft, clean scent lived somewhere deep in her bones. Her grandmother, Nora Ellison, had smelled like lavender soap every night after her hospital shifts. Lavender peppermint and tired love. Mara rubbed her thumb over the back of her hand. That's impossible, she whispered. The kitchen door opened behind her. A young busboy stepped out carrying a trash bag, saw her face, saw the card, then made the wise decision to say nothing. In New Orleans, survival often came down to knowing when a story did not belong to you. Mara slipped the card into the front pocket of her bag and walked toward the street. The rain had slowed to a mist, but the city still shone like it had been freshly painted black. Street lamps glowed in puddles. Balcony railings dripped. A drunk couple laughed under one umbrella too small for both of them. A carriage horse stamped near the curb, steam rising from its back. Mara pulled her thin coat tighter around her ribs and headed for the bus stop. She had $9 in tips, 3 unread texts from her roommate, 1 overdue rent notice folded inside her notebook, and a word in her chest that did not belong to her. Mama. By the time she reached Bywater, the rain had turned soft and steady again. Her apartment sat above a closed pawn shop with a faded sign and a barred window full of guitars, watches, and old brass lamps. The front door stuck when the air got damp, which in New Orleans meant it stuck most of the year. Mara shoved it open with her hip and climbed the stairs. Inside the apartment was warm in the way cheap places got warm, uneven, and stubborn. The window unit rattled, the kitchen light buzzed. A stack of child development textbooks sat on the table beside a chipped mug, 2 unpaid bills, and a plate with 1 cold piece of toast. Tessa Ward sat cross-legged on the couch in blue ER scrubs, eating cereal from a saucepan. She looked up from a medical drama playing on mute. You look like you met a ghost with money. Mara dropped her bag on the chair. I think I did. Tessa lowered the spoon. That is not the tone I wanted after midnight. Mara stood still in the center of the room, too tired to take off her coat, too awake to sit down. A little girl called me Mama tonight. Tessa blinked once. That is either adorable or the first scene of a haunted doll movie. She wasn't a doll, I assumed. She was Roman Vale's daughter. The spoon stopped halfway to Tessa's mouth. For a second, even the old window unit seemed to quiet down. Mara Tessa said slowly, "Please tell me you are talking about a different Roman Vale. Maybe a sweet old accountant with unfortunate branding." Mara shook her head. "The Roman Vale, black suit, bodyguards. Everyone acting like breathing near him required permission." Tessa set the saucepan on the coffee table. "Oh no." Mara gave a tired laugh with no humor in it. "That bad? That man is not bad. Bad is a guy who leaves no tip and calls you sweetheart. Roman Vale is the kind of man people discuss in kitchens with the water running so nobody hears them." Mara finally took off her coat and hung it on the back of a chair. "She's almost 3. Her name is Ivy. They said she's never spoken before." Tessa's expression changed. The sarcasm drained away, leaving the nurse underneath. "Never, never. Not one word." Then she pointed at me in front of a room full of men who looked like they could make a person disappear between courses, and she said, "Mama." Tessa leaned back, staring at her. "What did Roman do?" Mara pictured him standing there still as stone eyes fixed on Ivy like the child had pulled a knife out of heaven. He looked scared. Tessa frowned. "Roman Vale. Not of me. Not exactly." Mara looked down at her hand again. "Of hope, maybe." The apartment went quiet. Tessa knew better than most people what that word did to Mara. Hope had been expensive in their lives. It came with late fees, hospital calls, dead relatives, and men who promised better days before leaving women to pay for them. Mara reached into her bag and pulled out the black card. Tessa stared at it as if it might bite. "He gave you that?" "Yes." "Burn it." "I am not going to burn it." "Fine. Tear it up." "No." "Mara." She was scared. "He is dangerous." "She isn't." Tessa stood and crossed the room, her bare feet silent on the old floor. She picked up the card by the corner, careful not to touch too much of it. No logo, no name, just a number. That is not business. That is a threat with good design. Mara took it back. "I told him I wasn't for sale." Tessa's eyes narrowed. "You said that to Roman Vale?" "Yes." "Did the room survive barely?" Despite herself, Tessa almost smiled. Then the worry returned. "Mara, you have a talent for walking toward wounded things. Dogs, kids, elderly neighbors, men who look like thunderstorms with credit cards. I am not walking toward him. You kept the card." Mara looked at the table, then slid the card beneath her child development textbook. "I kept it because of Ivy." Tessa folded her arms. "That is how every bad idea gets dressed up before it walks into your life." Mara did not answer. She moved to the sink, turned on the faucet, and let cold water run over her hands. The lavender scent faded under the tap. For some reason, that made her throat tighten. "You should sleep," Tessa said. Mara shut off the water. "I know." But sleep did not come easily. When it finally did, it came with old hallways and white lights. Mara was 8 again, standing inside a hospital corridor with her sneakers untied and her hands sticky from the candy a nurse had given her. A police officer crouched in front of her, talking in a soft voice that made everything worse, because adults only softened their voices when the truth was sharp. Then Nora Ellison came around the corner. Her grandmother's face was gray with grief. Her white nursing shoes squeaked against the floor. She knelt in front of Mara and gathered her close before anyone said the words out loud. "Your mama and daddy loved you all the way," baby Nora whispered. "All the way." After that, Nora became home. A small apartment with chipped blue cabinets, peppermint tea, lavender soap, hospital shoes by the door, a calendar crowded with extra shifts, a woman who came home with swollen feet and still checked Mara's homework before taking off her coat. Nora used to press a warm palm to Mara's cheek and say, "Be soft, baby." but don't you ever be easy to break. Mara woke before sunrise with her heart pounding. The room was dim. Tessa was asleep on the couch with one arm hanging off the side, her phone glowing against the floor. Rain tapped at the window. Mara lay still listening to the city. Mama. By 8:20, she was on campus with bad coffee burning her tongue and her hair twisted into a clip that was already losing the fight. Tulane's old buildings rose through the damp morning with their pale columns and green lawns, all of it looking too graceful for the panic in her chest. She took her usual seat in developmental psychology and opened her notebook. Professor Harlan, a compact woman with silver hair and a voice that could cut through any hangover, paced at the front of the room. Trauma does not always announce itself in obvious ways, the professor said. In young children, it may show up as silence, sleep disruption, touch avoidance, sudden attachment, or unusual responses to scent and sound. Mara's pen stopped moving. Professor Harlan turned to the board and wrote one phrase. The body remembers before language. Children do not always attach to the person adults expect, she continued. They do not attach to titles. They attach to patterns, warmth, rhythm, scent, safety. A child may recognize safety long before she has words for it. Mara stared at the sentence until the letters blurred. The body remembers before language. Her hand moved almost without permission. She wrote it in the margin, then underlined it once. After class, she told herself she was only going to print an assignment. Instead, she sat at a library computer and typed Roman Vale into the search bar. The results came fast. Vale Maritime expands Gulf shipping routes. Roman Vale donates $8 million to Children's Hospital. Federal inquiry into port contracts ends without charges. Serena Vale. Wife of businessman, Roman Vale dies after childbirth. Mara clicked the last one. The article was short, careful, and cold in the way rich grief became once lawyers touched it. Serena Vale had died after complications following the birth of her daughter. The family requested privacy. No further details were released. There was a photo. Serena stood beside Roman outside a charity event, one hand resting over her pregnant belly. She was beautiful, but not untouchable. Her smile looked warm, almost mischievous. Roman stood beside her in a dark suit, but he was not looking at the camera. He was looking at Serena, like the world had gone quiet for her. Mara sat back. For one strange second, she felt like she had intruded on a room where grief was still sitting. She closed the page. "This is none of my business," she whispered. But the sentence did not settle. By 11 o'clock, Mara was tying on her apron at Ruby's Diner near Magazine Street. Ruby's was narrow, loud, and stubbornly alive. It smelled like chicory coffee, bacon grease, cinnamon, and old vinyl booths warmed by too many bodies. The floor tiles were cracked. The bell over the door stuck whenever it rained. There was always at least one man at the counter reading a newspaper like the internet had personally insulted his family. Ruby DeLuca ran the place like a queen who had survived 3 wars and 2 bad marriages. She was in her 60s, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and capable of making grown men apologize to chairs they had bumped into. Mara had just started refilling sugar jars when Ruby looked her up and down. "You look haunted. I slept badly. That is regular poor. Haunted has more shine. Thank you for clarifying." Ruby leaned one hip against the counter. "You eat today?" "I had coffee. That is a beverage with ambition. It is not food. It had emotional value. So does revenge. I do not serve it with eggs." Mara almost laughed. Almost. The lunch rush came in hard. Office workers. Delivery drivers. 2 mothers with strollers. A construction crew that smelled like rain and drywall. A priest who ordered black coffee and pie with the seriousness of a man confessing to both. Mara moved through it the way she always did, fast, warm, invisible when needed, and bright when paid to be. She topped off coffee, balanced plates, remembered who hated onions. smiled when a man called her honey in a tone that made the word feel sticky. She had just set down a shrimp po' boy at table 6 when the bell over the door rang. The diner changed. Not dramatically. Ruby's customers were too hungry and too proud to fall silent all at once. But voices lowered. Forks slowed. The man with the newspaper dropped the corner of his paper just enough to see. Roman Vale stood inside the door. He wore a charcoal coat over a dark suit. Rain glistened on his shoulders. One arm held Ivy dressed in a pale yellow sweater and tiny shoes polished like someone loved her too carefully. 2 men entered behind him. One stayed by the door. One moved near the window. Ruby looked at Roman, then at Mara. "Well," she said under her breath, "there's the haunted." Mara's pulse jumped. Roman's eyes found hers immediately. Ivy followed his gaze. The child's whole face changed. "Mama!" The word cut through Ruby's diner like a match struck in the dark. This time it was not wrapped in crystal glasses and velvet curtains. It landed in Mara's world among chipped mugs, ketchup bottles, cracked booths, and ordinary people holding their breath around something extraordinary. Ivy reached for her. Mara stood frozen for half a second. Ruby gave her a look. "Don't stand there waiting for the floor to give advice. Take the baby." Roman crossed the diner. "I apologize for interrupting your shift." Mara wiped her hands on her apron. "How did you know I worked here?" "You mentioned you worked more than one job. That is not an answer. It is the polite version. That is not comforting." "No," Roman said. "I imagine not." Ivy leaned so far toward Mara that Roman had to tighten his hold. Mara looked at him. For a breath, she saw the question behind his controlled face. "Can I trust you with the only thing I cannot lose?" She nodded once. Roman handed Ivy over. The little girl settled against Mara instantly. Her small body softened. Her fist curled into Mara's apron. Her cheek pressed beneath Mara's collarbone like she had found a place she had known before. Ruby saw it. So did Roman. His jaw tightened. Ruby pointed toward the corner booth. "Sit. I'll cover her section for 10 minutes. If this turns dramatic, I charge rich people rates." Roman inclined his head. "That seems fair." Ruby narrowed her eyes. "Don't charm me. I am vaccinated against men in expensive coats." "I would not presume." "You absolutely would." Mara almost smiled, and Roman looked at her as if that small sound mattered more than it should. They sat in the corner booth. Ivy remained in Mara's lap, turning a laminated menu over with deep concentration. Ruby brought coffee for Roman without asking and a small plate of banana slices for Ivy. Roman looked at the plate. "She may not eat those." Ruby poured coffee. "Then she can judge them privately." When Ruby walked away, silence stretched between Mara and Roman. Outside, rain slid down the diner windows. Inside, the room pretended not to listen. Roman wrapped both hands around the coffee mug. "I took Ivy to her specialist this morning." Mara kept her voice gentle. "And—" She said 2 more words before breakfast. Mara looked down at the child. What words Roman's gaze stayed on Ivy? "Door." Mara waited. "And Mara." Her throat tightened. Roman continued, voice low. "She stood by the nursery door and said it until I opened it." Mara brushed a curl back from Ivy's forehead. "Roman, I'm not her mother." "I know. Does she?" His face went still, but the stillness was not cold. It was grief held upright by force. She knows Serena is gone. She was an infant when it happened, but she knows absence. Children know that before they know names. Mara could not argue with that. Ivy picked up a banana slice aimed for her own mouth, missed, and pressed it against Mara's chin. Mara smiled despite the ache in her chest. "Thank you. Very generous." Ivy smiled. It was small, almost shy. Roman looked away toward the window. Mara saw his hand tighten around the mug. He said, "I want to ask you something. You seem like a man who usually gives instructions. I am trying not to be." That disarmed her more than she wanted. Roman looked back at her. "I want Ivy to spend time with you. Public places, daylight, anywhere you choose. If your schedule is the obstacle, I will compensate you for your time." "No." The word came out faster than thought. Roman went still. Mara straightened. "No money. Not for this." His eyes sharpened. "You are sure she is a child, not a transaction?" For the first time since he entered the diner, something like respect moved across Roman's face. "Good." Mara frowned. "Good. I needed to know you would say that." Ruby appeared with the coffee pot at exactly the wrong moment. "I like her too," Ruby said. "She has sense, which is inconvenient because she rarely uses it on herself." "Ruby." Ruby topped off Roman's coffee and pointed the pot at him. "You hurt that girl, and I will find out where powerful men keep their shame." Roman did not blink. "Understood." Ruby walked away. Mara closed her eyes briefly. "I am sorry." "I am not," Roman said. "I prefer clear terms." Mara looked at him, then laughed once under her breath. The sound surprised both of them. Ivy looked up, fascinated. "Ma," she said. Mara froze. Roman did too. Ivy patted Mara's apron. "Ma-ra." Mara touched the child's cheek. "Yes," she whispered. "Mara." Roman looked like a man watching a locked door open from the inside. Mara had to look away. She focused on Ivy's tiny hand, the banana smear on her sleeve, the warmth of the child against her. Anything but Roman's face. After a moment, Mara said, "I can meet twice a week, maybe more if school and work allow it. I choose the places. No private homes, no expensive gifts, no pressure." Roman nodded. "Done." "That easy. When it concerns Ivy." "Yes." The answer was too immediate to distrust and too intense to feel safe. Mara pulled her phone from her apron pocket. "Give me your number." "You already have it. I have a terrifying black card. That is not the same thing." His mouth moved almost into a smile. She typed his number and saved it as Roman Vale, then sent a blank text so he would have hers. His phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then at her. "Thank you, Mara Ellison." The way he said her full name made something in her stomach tighten. She ignored it. When Roman stood to leave, Ivy protested with a soft, wounded sound. Mara handed her back carefully. The little girl clutched at her apron, lower lip trembling. Roman murmured something near Ivy's ear, low, patient, a father's voice, not a king's. Ivy quieted, but her eyes stayed on Mara. At the door, Roman paused. "Tomorrow." Mara shook her head. "I have class and a dinner shift." The day after, she should have said no. Instead, she said Thursday, 2:00, City Park, near the old oak by the sculpture garden, if the weather holds. Roman nodded. "We'll be there." He stepped out into the gray afternoon. His black SUV waited at the curb, rain shining on its hood. Ivy looked over his shoulder at Mara through the diner window. Her small mouth moved. Mara could not hear the word. She knew it anyway. "Mama!" The SUV pulled away, red taillights blurring in the wet glass. Mara stood there longer than she meant to. Ruby came up beside her. "That man looks like trouble with excellent tailoring." Mara folded her arms. "He loves his daughter. Those two things can live in the same suit." "I know." Ruby studied her profile. "Do you?" Mara did not answer. The rest of the shift passed in pieces. Coffee, pancakes, extra napkins, a child dropping crayons under table 3, a man complaining his eggs were too soft after eating half of them. Every ordinary motion felt slightly unreal, as if the world had tilted while no one else was looking. After work, Mara walked home through damp streets with diner grease in her hair and Roman's number in her phone. Tessa was at the table, surrounded by nursing notes, one hand buried in her curls. Mara dropped into the chair across from her. He came to Ruby's. Tessa did not look up. Of course he did. Men like that do not wait for fate to follow up. Ivy said my name. Now Tessa looked up. Her expression softened despite herself. Oh, Mara. Mara leaned back and stared at the ceiling. She knew me. She does not know you. She feels like she does. That is worse. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then Tessa said, You already care about her. She is not hard to care about. And him? Mara's answer came too late. I barely know him. Tessa gave her a tired, knowing look. That was not no. Mara stood and reached for the kettle. I'm making tea. You hate tea. My grandmother believed tea helped. Did it know? But it gave her something to do while worrying. Tessa closed her textbook. Make me some, too. Later, after Tessa fell asleep with notes spread across her chest, Mara sat alone at the kitchen table. The apartment was quiet except for the window unit and the soft hiss of tires on wet pavement below. She opened her notebook. Instead of studying, she wrote one sentence in the margin. The body remembers before language. Then she looked at Roman's text thread, empty except for the blank message she had sent him. Her thumb hovered. Finally, she typed, Thursday, 2 o'clock, City Park, near the old oak by the sculpture garden. The reply came almost instantly. We'll be there. Mara stared at those 3 words until the screen dimmed. From the couch, Tessa mumbled half asleep. Do not marry the scary man. Mara laughed softly in the dark. I am meeting his daughter in a park, she whispered. But when she went to bed, she placed the phone on the pillow beside her. Outside, New Orleans kept breathing under rain music and old secrets. Inside, Mara lay awake longer than she wanted to, remembering the way Ivy had reached for her through a room full of dangerous men, and wondering why a child who had never spoken had chosen her name as if it had been waiting in her mouth all along. By Thursday afternoon, Mara had checked her phone so many times that Tessa finally looked up from her nursing notes and said, If you stare at that screen any harder, it's going to file a restraining order. I'm not staring. You are spiritually attached to it. Mara locked the phone and shoved it into her coat pocket. I'm meeting a child in a public park. Tessa leaned back in her chair. You're meeting Roman Vale's child in a public park, which means the park is probably no longer public in any meaningful sense. Mara grabbed her scarf from the back of the chair. City Park has ducks, tourists, joggers, and at least 3 men selling pralines. I'll survive. That man probably has snipers dressed as joggers. Tessa. What I work in an emergency room. My imagination is just medical preparation. Mara smiled despite herself, but the smile faded as soon as she stepped outside. New Orleans was bright after 2 days of rain. The streets still held puddles in the cracks, and the air smelled like wet leaves, coffee, and river mud. Sunlight flashed off car windows. A street musician on the corner played a slow trumpet tune that made the morning feel older than it was. Mara rode the bus with her hands folded around her phone. She told herself she was calm. She was not. The truth sat under her ribs like a second heartbeat. She wanted to see Ivy. She wanted to know if the child would still look at her that way outside the shock of a restaurant and the warmth of a diner. She wanted to prove to herself that this was only concern, only kindness, only the kind of thing her grandmother would have done. But every time her thoughts moved toward Roman, she pulled them back. Roman Vale was not the story. Ivy was. That was what Mara told herself all the way to City Park. The old oak near the sculpture garden stood wide and massive, its branches stretching low as if the tree had been listening to human secrets for 100 years and had learned not to interrupt. Spanish moss hung in silver curtains. Children ran near the walking path. A woman pushed a stroller while talking into her phone. Somewhere nearby, ducks complained loudly at someone who had run out of bread. Mara saw Roman before he saw her, or maybe he had seen her first and simply did not move. He stood beneath the oak in a dark coat, one hand in his pocket, Ivy balanced against his other side. The child wore a yellow sweater, soft brown boots, and a ribbon in her curls that had already started to slide loose. Roman looked too sharp for the afternoon, too controlled for a place full of grass stains and melting ice cream. Mara spotted the security next. One man by the coffee cart, one near the statue pretending to study his phone, another on a bench with a folded newspaper held upside down. She stopped in front of Roman and lifted an eyebrow. "Does every playdate come with surveillance?" Roman glanced toward the man with the newspaper. "That one is new. He's reading upside down. He is better with firearms than literature." Mara tried not to laugh. Ivy saw her. The child's body went still for one breath as if joy had startled her. Then she leaned forward with both arms reaching. "Mama." The word still hurt. Not because Mara hated it, because some secret part of her did not. She stepped closer and softened her voice. "Hi, Ivy. I'm here." Roman looked at Mara, waiting. He did not hand Ivy over until Mara nodded. That small permission mattered. Mara felt it more than she wanted to. He had listened. He had remembered the rules. When Ivy settled into Mara's arms, her whole body changed. The tension drained out of her shoulders. Her cheek pressed into Mara's scarf. One little hand touched Mara's chin, then her mouth, then her cheek, as though checking that she was real. Mara said gently, tapping her own chest. "Mara." Ivy studied her lips. "Ma," she whispered. Roman's face went still. Mara smiled. "That's right." "Mara." Ivy frowned with great seriousness. "Mara." Roman looked away toward the branches. Mara saw the movement anyway. "You heard that she asked?" His voice came low. "Yes. She's trying. She has never tried before." The words were simple, but the weight behind them made Mara's throat tighten. They walked slowly beneath the trees. Ivy wanted down after 5 minutes and insisted on walking between them. One hand wrapped around Mara's fingers. The other took Roman's. It should have looked strange, a poor waitress, a crime lord, and a child moving through sunlight like a family nobody had agreed to name. It did not look strange. That was the dangerous part. Ivy stopped every few steps. A duck near the pond. A red ball rolling away from a toddler. A dog wearing a blue bandana. Each thing required her full attention. Each thing seemed to demand a word. "Duck," Mara said, pointing. Ivy stared at the bird. "Duh." Roman looked down. "Duck." Ivy looked up at him. "Duh." He nodded once, solemn as a judge. "Accepted." Mara laughed. "You know praise is allowed to sound happy. I was happy. That was your happy voice. It was restrained. That sounds exhausting." Roman looked at her then, and for a moment the air under the oak seemed warmer. "It has served me well." "Has it?" He did not answer right away. Ivy tugged Mara's hand and pointed at the dog. "Dog," Mara said. Ivy's face brightened. "Duh." Roman crouched beside her. "Dog." The dog, feeling important, barked once. Ivy, startled, then burst into a tiny laugh. Roman froze. The laugh was quick and bright and almost gone before the world could hold it, but it struck Roman like a bell. Mara watched his face change. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Enough for her. He looked like a man hearing music from a room he thought had burned down. When was the last time, Mara asked softly. Roman did not look away from Ivy. Before Serena died, she laughed in her sleep sometimes. After that, not much. Mara wanted to say something comforting. Every sentence that came to mind sounded too small. So she picked up a fallen leaf and placed it carefully on top of her own head. Ivy stared. Mara widened her eyes. "I am a very serious tree." Ivy laughed again. This time Roman looked at Mara. It was not a smile, not yet, but something in him gave way. For the next hour they moved through the park at Ivy's pace, which meant slowly and with great respect for every puddle bird flower and crack in the path. Roman bought coffee from the cart. Mara refused at first because the cup probably cost more than her lunch, but Roman simply handed it to her and said, "It is not a gift. It is weather support. That is the strangest way anyone has ever bought me coffee. I am out of practice." With coffee, with asking. That landed too softly. Mara looked down at Ivy, who was trying to place a pebble into Roman's coat pocket. "Your daughter is robbing the park." Roman looked at the pebble, then at Ivy. "She has my business instincts. Should I be worried?" "Yes." Mara laughed, and Ivy laughed because Mara did. Roman watched both of them as if he did not know where to put the sight. The meetings became rhythm after that, not routine. Routine was too ordinary a word for the way Mara began to count the days by Ivy's small victories. On Tuesday they met at the aquarium, while rain hammered the roof and Lake Pontchartrain looked like a sheet of dark steel beyond the glass. Blue light moved over Ivy's face as she stood in front of the giant tank, both palms pressed to the glass. A stingray passed overhead, wide and silent. Ivy tilted her head back. "Big," she whispered. Mara crouched beside her. "Yes, very big." Ivy pointed again. "Fish." Roman stood behind them, hands in his coat pockets. Mara looked over her shoulder. She said 2 words together. "I heard." His voice sounded rough, like the words had scraped something open on the way out. Ivy pressed closer to the glass. "Big fish." Mara smiled. "That's right, sweetheart." Roman turned away, but not before Mara saw his eyes shine. Later in the aquarium cafe, Ivy fell asleep in her stroller with one hand wrapped around the ear of a stuffed rabbit Roman had pulled from the inside pocket of his coat. The rabbit was worn at the edges, its soft gray fur rubbed thin from years of being held. Mara stared at it. "You carry that in your coat?" Roman looked at the rabbit as if it had insulted him. "She likes it. You carry a stuffed bunny inside a mafia coat. It is a practical location. It is adorable." "No, it is absolutely not." Mara smiled into her coffee. Rain tapped the windows. The cafe smelled like fried food, wet coats and tired parents. Children moved around them with sticky hands and loud voices. Roman sat across from Mara like he belonged nowhere and had learned to make every room fear him instead. Mara watched him wipe a drop of water from Ivy's stroller canopy. The gesture was small, careful. It made her ask the question before she could stop herself. "What exactly are you, Roman?" His eyes lifted. "A father. That is the answer you give when you want me to stop asking." He leaned back slowly. For a moment she thought he would shut down. Instead, he looked toward the rainy windows. "My family moves freight through the Gulf. Ships, warehouses, trucks, security contracts, construction money, legal paper over illegal history." And underneath his gaze returned to her. Debts, favors, men who smile in court and bleed in parking lots. Mara's fingers tightened around her cup. "Do you hurt people?" "Yes." No hesitation, no excuse. The honesty chilled her more than a lie would have. Innocent people. Roman's face did not change, but his eyes did. Not by choice. That is not the same as no. No, he said. It is not. The rain tapped harder. Ivy shifted in sleep. Mara looked at the child, then back at him. I want to help children who grow up afraid. I know. You are part of a world that teaches fear. Roman nodded once. I know that too. She expected defense, anger, a polished answer about necessary evil and hard choices. He gave her none of it. That was worse. What are you asking from me, she said, his voice lowered. To see me clearly before you decide to leave. Mara's chest tightened. That sounds like you think I'm leaving. I think sensible women do. She looked down at her coffee. I have rarely been accused of being sensible. No, Roman said, softly. You walked toward my daughter in a room full of men who would have stepped back. She was scared. So were you. Mara had no answer for that. On Thursday, they met at Café du Monde because Ivy had spotted powdered sugar in a picture book and demanded it with the fierce certainty of a future queen. Roman looked at the plate of beignets as though it had been sent to test him. This is mostly sugar. Mara tore one in half. That is why people have joy. Ivy reached for a piece. Roman moved to stop her. Ivy looked him straight in the eye. No. Mara pressed a napkin to her mouth. Roman glanced at her. Do not laugh. I would never. You are laughing. I am supporting language development. You are enjoying my defeat. That too. Ivy took the beignet with both hands. Powdered sugar fell onto Roman's sleeve. He stared at the white dust on black wool. Mara waited for him to react. Roman simply picked up a napkin and cleaned Ivy's fingers first. That was the kind of thing that made caution loosen its grip. At the bookshop in the Garden District, Ivy ignored the bright picture books and chose a heavy book about whales that she could barely lift. Roman bought it without question and carried it under one arm while Ivy walked ahead holding Mara's hand. She picked the heaviest book in the store, Mara said. She has ambition. She has your stubbornness. Roman looked at her. And your judgment. The words hung between them too long. Mara looked away first. The bond between Mara and Ivy grew in ways that everyone could see. Ivy brought back words from every meeting like treasures collected from ashore. Duck. Dog. Big fish. No. Book. Mess. Mara. Sometimes Mama. That word never stopped landing deep. The bond between Mara and Roman grew in quieter places. In the way he remembered she took coffee with cream but no sugar. In the way his hand hovered near her elbow when they crossed slick streets never touching unless she stumbled. In the way she noticed he always stood where he could see every exit. In the way he noticed she hated lilies because funeral homes used them too often. One evening after the bookshop wind came sharp off the river and Ivy fell asleep against Mara's shoulder before they reached the curb. Roman's SUV waited under a street lamp. I can take the bus, Mara said. I know. That was not an offer. No, Roman said. It was respect. The offer is a ride. She should have refused. She had refused before. But Ivy's hand was caught in her sleeve and the child made a small sound when Mara shifted her weight. Mara got into the back seat. The SUV moved through New Orleans in soft darkness. Rain glowed on the windows. Jazz spilled from open bar doors. Streetlights streaked gold across Roman's face as he sat across from her Ivy, asleep between them in her car seat, still holding Mara's sleeve. She does that when she is afraid you will disappear, Roman said. Mara looked down at Ivy's tiny fist. I'm not disappearing. The words came too easily. Roman heard that too. Mara turned toward the window before he could answer. After a while, she asked, "Where is Serena buried?" Roman's gaze shifted to the glass. "Metairie Cemetery, in the family tomb." "Do you go often?" "Yes." "Does Ivy?" "Sometimes." She touches the stone and says nothing. Mara swallowed. She was probably kind. Roman looked at her then. She was. He did not say beautiful. He did not say perfect. He said kind, as if that was the part death had not managed to take. The car stopped outside Mara's building. Roman stepped out first and opened her door himself. Mara carefully eased Ivy's fingers from her sleeve. The child stirred. Mama Ivy whispered, still asleep, "Stay." The word stayed between them in the damp night. Roman's hand paused near the door. Mara looked at him. His face was controlled, but his eyes were not. "She says that now," he said quietly, "when she does not want something to end." Mara tried to smile. "That is a lot of pressure for a Thursday night." "It is." She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. "You don't have to walk me to the entrance." "I know." "Then why are you—" Roman looked at the dark doorway, then back at her. "Because this city is less harmless than it pretends to be." That sounds like something a dangerous man says when he's worried. His gaze held hers. Maybe it is both. Rain misted around them. Up close, Roman looked less untouchable, more tired, more human, more dangerous in the way people become dangerous when they start to matter. Mara looked down at her worn shoes. "Tessa thinks you probably have a body count." One dark brow lifted. "And what do you think?" Mara studied his face beneath the streetlight. "I think you are carrying more than you let anyone see." For a second, Roman did not move. Then he said very low, "That is the trouble with you, Mara Ellison. What trouble you see too much." She should have laughed. She did not. "Good night, Roman." "Good night, Mara." She climbed the stairs without looking back until she reached the landing. When she turned, he was still beside the SUV, one hand resting on the roof, watching to make sure she got inside. Only after she shut the door did the headlights move away. Tessa was awake at the table, eating peanut butter from the jar with a spoon and pretending to study. "You're late." "I know. You look weird." "That is specific. Glowing weird. I hate it." Mara went to the sink for water. Tessa closed the textbook. "Mara." "What?" "This is not just about the kid anymore." Mara stared down into the glass. The apartment was small, warm, and familiar. The old floorboards creaked. The bills waited on the counter. Rain whispered against the window. "No," she said quietly. The admission barely made a sound. Tessa sighed. Outside, a car door closed. Mara looked up. Across the street, half hidden beneath the dripping branches, a dark sedan sat with its engine running. Its windows were too black to see through. It was not Roman's SUV. Mara set the glass down slowly. Tessa followed her gaze and went still. The sedan's headlights blinked once, then went dark. The dark sedan did not move. Mara stood at the window with one hand resting against the peeling frame, watching rain bead on the glass between her and the car below. The street was quiet except for the low hiss of tires passing through puddles and the distant horn of a riverboat somewhere beyond the warehouses. Tessa came up beside her barefoot peanut butter spoon still in her hand. "That is not one of his cars," she said. Mara did not answer. The sedan sat beneath a leaning oak engine running headlights off windows black enough to swallow the streetlight. It had the patience of something trained to wait. Tessa lowered her voice. "Call him." Mara hated that her first instinct had been the same. She grabbed her phone from the table and tapped Roman's name. He answered before the first ring finished. "Mara." No hello. No surprise. Just her name, as if he had been waiting with the phone in his hand. Her fingers tightened around the screen. Are you having me followed? A silence stretched between them. Not empty. Controlled. Protected, Roman said. Mara closed her eyes. Those are not the same word. No. Then why is there a car outside my apartment? Tessa leaned closer, listening now without pretending not to. Roman's voice dropped. Because someone asked questions about you. The room seemed to tilt. What kind of questions? Your school, your work, your schedule. Mara looked back at the sedan, and another pause. Mara. Her stomach went cold. And what? Your grandmother. The word hit harder than it should have. Nora had been dead for 3 years, buried under Louisiana sun, and church bells gone from every danger except memory. My grandmother, Mara, said. Yes. Why would anyone ask about Nora Roman did not answer quickly enough. Roman, did Nora Ellison ever work maternity at Mercy General Hospital? Mara sat down slowly on the edge of a chair. Yes. For years. Why? From the other side of the phone, she heard him breathe in once. Because I found a letter she wrote 3 days after Serena died. The apartment went silent. Even Tessa stopped moving. Mara stared at the water stain on the wall across from her. For a strange moment, she could see Nora's hand. The strong fingers, the neat nails cut short for hospital work. The blue veins beneath brown skin. The silver band she wore even after Mara's grandfather died. What letter? I don't want to do this over the phone. A sharp laugh slipped out of Mara before she could stop it. You called me and said my dead grandmother wrote a letter about your dead wife. You do not get to become mysterious now. I know. The simple answer stole some of her anger and left fear in its place. Outside, the sedan remained perfectly still. Tell the car to leave, Mara said. No, Roman. Someone is looking at you because of me. Until I know who I am, not leaving you unprotected. You mean watched. I mean alive. The word landed hard. Mara looked toward Tessa, who had gone pale in the kitchen light. Is Ivy safe? Mara asked. Yes. Are you sure? Yes. That answer came without hesitation. It helped. Not enough. Where are you? Mara asked. My office. At this hour, I did not want these files in my house. Files, she repeated. Yes. She pressed her fingers to her forehead. I have class in the morning, I know. Stop knowing my schedule like that. It is creepy. A faint silence followed, almost human around the edges. After class, Cal will bring you to me. I can take the streetcar. I know you can. That was not permission. No, Roman said softly. It was respect. Mara hated the way those little shifts in his voice could step around her anger. I am still furious with you. You should be. I mean it. I know. She looked at the sedan again. If this is about Nora, I hear it from you. Not one of your men, not a lawyer, not a folder on a table. You have my word. She almost said she did not know what his word was worth. The problem was, she did. The next morning, Professor Harlan's lecture moved around Mara like rain through a window screen. Words passed over her. Attachment, stress response, memory, developmental regression. She wrote nothing in her notebook except one name. Nora. At 11:15, she stepped outside into air that smelled of wet magnolia and exhaust. A black SUV waited near the curb. Cal Mercer stood beside the rear door in a charcoal suit, his gray hair cut close, his face calm enough to make calm feel dangerous. Miss Ellison, you people really commit to the dramatic car thing. Cal opened the door. Mr. Vale values consistency. Was that a joke? Depends how much trouble I am in for making it. Despite herself, Mara almost smiled. almost. The drive downtown was quiet. The city moved past in pieces. Old balconies, broken sidewalks, tourists with umbrellas, men unloading crates near the river, a woman in red heels stepping around a puddle like she had declared war on weather itself. Mara felt outside all of it. Roman's office occupied the top floors of a black glass tower overlooking the Mississippi. The lobby was all pale stone, dark wood, and silence so expensive it made Mara's worn shoes feel loud. A receptionist stood before Mara could speak. "Miss Ellison, this way, please." Mara almost said she could find an elevator by herself, but Cal had already entered a code. The private elevator opened soundlessly. As it rose, Mara caught her reflection in the mirrored wall. Old coat, damp curls escaping her clip, a waitress uniform folded in her tote bag because she had a shift later, a student with a notebook full of unpaid hope. She looked exactly like a woman who did not belong in Roman Vale's tower. Then she remembered Ivy's hands reaching for her. Maybe belonging had nothing to do with permission. The elevator opened into a quiet reception space framed by floor-to-ceiling windows. Beyond the glass, the Mississippi rolled wide and brown beneath a gray sky. Roman's office door was open. He stood near the windows with his jacket-off sleeves rolled to his forearms, tie loosened. He looked as if the night had not ended for him. On the low table in front of the sofa were folders, hospital records, copies of charts, and one clear sleeve holding a handwritten letter. Mara stopped in the doorway. Roman turned. For a breath, neither of them moved. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I did not come for you." "I know." She crossed the room and stood over the table. The letter waited there. Her breath caught before she touched it. She knew the handwriting the way some people knew hymns. Nora Ellison had written in blue ink, neat and slanted, practical but graceful. The same handwriting that had signed school forms, birthday cards, grocery lists, and notes taped to the fridge. Milk, eggs, tea. "Don't forget your sweater, baby." Mara picked up the letter with both hands. The date at the top was 3 days after Serena Vale died. "Dear Mr. Vale, please accept my deepest condolences for the loss of your wife. I understand this letter may be unwelcome during a time of grief, but I feel compelled to put in writing what I witnessed during Mrs. Vale's labor." Mara's hands trembled. She kept reading. "A medication was administered outside the approved treatment plan over my objection. I documented my concern and reported it through proper internal channels. I believe the dosage and timing require immediate review. I fear my concerns may be minimized or buried." The last line blurred. "If the truth is ever needed, I pray this reaches the right hands. Nora Ellison, R.N." The office was silent around her. Roman did not speak. That mercy almost broke her. Mara lowered the letter slowly. "She never told me. No. I lived with her. I knew when her knees hurt. I knew which tea she drank when she couldn't sleep. I knew she hated hospital coffee and loved old westerns and cried every Christmas Eve when she thought I was asleep." Her voice shook. "I did not know this." Roman's face changed slightly. "Maybe she did not want you carrying it." Mara looked at him. She carried it alone. Yes. That one word hurt because it was true. She sat before her legs could betray her. Roman poured water from a glass bottle and handed it to her without comment. She took it. The cold steadied her fingers. "What happened to Serena?" she asked. Roman sat across from her, but he did not relax. He leaned forward with his elbows on his knees and his hands clasped. "The official report says postpartum hemorrhage following rapid destabilization. What does that mean?" "It means they gave me a sentence that sounded medical enough to bury a body under." Mara looked at the folders, and now Now the chart is clean, where it should be messy, and messy, where it should be clean. Medication times do not match nursing notes. One dosage was crossed out and rewritten. Dr. Malcolm Price signed 2 pages after Serena was already gone. The doctor's name entered the room like smoke. Price was her doctor. He was the attending physician, and Nora objected to something he gave her. Yes. Mara looked back at the letter. Why didn't you see this before? The question came out sharper than she meant. Roman accepted it without flinching. Because I was burying my wife and learning how to hold a newborn who cried like she knew what had happened. Because the hospital gave me a reason wrapped in careful language, and at the time a reason felt better than a war. Mara looked at him then. Really looked. The power was still there. The money. The danger. The name that made grown men lower their voices. But beneath it was a man who had been handed a baby and a death certificate in the same breath. Her anger softened. Only a little. Who buried the letter I do not know yet. It was never logged through the public complaint system. My investigator found it in a private archive attached to a retired administrator's off-site storage. How deep have you been digging? His eyes held hers. Deep enough that someone noticed. The room seemed colder. Mara set the glass down. Someone asked about me because of this. Yes, because of Nora. And you had my apartment watched. Yes. She stood. Roman rose too, not quickly but at once. Mara crossed to the window because if she stayed near the letter, she might cry, and she was too angry to let the room have that kind of softness. You should have told me. Yes. She turned around. That's it. No defense. You are right. She stared at him. Roman stood near the table, tall and tired and dangerous, with the river behind him and guilt in his eyes. I am not sorry I protected you, he said. I am sorry I decided how without asking. That is dangerously close to sounding reasonable. I am trying. You do not get to turn concern into control. No, you do not get to care about me and then make my life smaller. His jaw moved once. No. If I am in danger, I deserve the truth. Yes. She hated him a little for making the argument so hard by agreeing. She looked away first. What else Roman did not pretend not to understand. There is a name that keeps appearing around the edges. Whose name Julian Carver? Mara searched her memory. Serena's godfather. Roman's gaze sharpened. You read about her. I looked you up. Of course you did. That sounds judgmental from a man who put a car outside my apartment. Fair. Mara almost smiled. It vanished quickly. What does Julian have to do with this? He was Serena's godfather, my father's friend, my business partner after my father died. He handled portions of Serena's family trust before our marriage. And you think he was involved? I think he had access motive and a talent for standing close to tragedy without getting blood on his cuffs. A chill moved through her. Why would he want Serena dead? Roman looked toward the river. I do not know enough to answer that without guessing. But you have guessed. Yes. She waited. He turned back. Serena was days away from full control over several trust assets tied to port-land shipping routes and waterfront redevelopment. Julian wanted those assets leveraged. Serena refused. She wanted distance from that part of the business. Mara thought of the photo on the library computer. Serena's hand on Roman's sleeve. Roman looking at her like she had made him believe in daylight. She was trying to pull you out. Roman's silence answered. Did you want out? Mara asked. His voice changed. I wanted whatever kept her looking at me like I was still capable of becoming decent. The honesty landed between them. Mara looked down at Nora's letter. My grandmother saw something. Yes, and someone made sure no one listened. Roman's voice turned cold. Yes. Before Mara could answer, Roman's phone rang. He looked at the screen. The man sitting with grief disappeared. In his place stood the man New Orleans feared. He answered, "Talk." Mara watched his face while he listened. No color drained from it. Roman Vale was not built that way. Instead, every line of him sharpened. His eyes flicked to Mara. "I am on my way." He hung up with terrifying care. "What happened?" Mara asked. He was already reaching for his jacket. Someone approached Ivy in the park. For 1 second, the office had no air. What Cal's man stopped him before he reached her how Roman's voice was controlled in a way that made it worse. He had a stuffed rabbit. The camera near the bench was disabled. He walked toward her like he belonged there. Mara grabbed her coat. "Take me to her." Roman did not argue. That scared her almost as much as the news. The building moved around him in seconds. Men appeared in the hall. Cal was already at the elevator. Phones came out. Orders passed in low voices. Cars shifted below before Mara even reached the private lift. Inside the elevator, mirrored walls reflected Roman from every angle. All of them looked lethal. Mara stood beside him, pulse pounding in her throat. "She is safe?" she asked. "Yes." "Say it again." His eyes met hers. "She is safe. Frightened, but safe." The elevator dropped. For 1 strange second, Roman reached for her hand. Not tenderly. Not romantically. Like a man needing an anchor. Mara let him. The ride to Roman's townhouse near the Garden District blurred. The SUV cut through traffic with impossible precision. Rain began again, turning the streets slick and dark. Roman made call after call, each sentence clipped and quiet. "Find the car. Pull the camera logs. No press. Move the child. No, not tomorrow. Now." Mara sat with her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles hurt. At the townhouse, Ivy was in the front parlor with her nanny, a pale woman named Clara, whose eyes were red from fear. The moment Ivy saw Mara, she burst into tears. "Mama!" Mara crossed the room and gathered her up. I'm here, sweetheart." Ivy shook against her. Her little hands clutched Mara's coat like the floor had vanished. Roman stood in the doorway watching them with a face so still it might have been carved from winter. Clara spoke quietly. He never touched her. Security got between them. But she saw him run. Mara pressed her cheek to Ivy's hair. Roman said, "We are leaving." Mara looked up. "Where?" "The estate." "Lake Pontchartrain." "Yes." "For how long?" "As long as necessary." A day ago, Mara would have argued. She would have said she had work school rent a roommate a life. She would have reminded him she was not one of his possessions and not part of his world. But Ivy was trembling in her arms, and Nora's letter was folded inside Mara's coat pocket like a match waiting to burn down every ordinary excuse. "Sloane needs to know where I am," Mara said, then caught herself. Tessa. Roman's eyes softened just slightly as if he understood panic rearranging names. "She will know, I tell her. Not one of your men." "Of course." "And Ruby." "Yes." "And I am not a prisoner." Roman's face changed. "No, never." She believed him. That was terrifying too. The drive north took them out of the city and toward older roads lined with heavy trees and gated homes set far back from the street. Rain slid over the windows in silver lines. Ivy slept in Mara's lap despite the car seat waiting beside them, one hand locked around Mara's sleeve. Roman sat across from them watching the road, the mirrors, his phone, his daughter. The Vale estate rose out of the rain near Lake Pontchartrain, like something built to survive hurricanes and enemies. Stone walls, tall windows glowing gold, iron gates, security lights moving across wet grass. Beyond the house, the lake was a black, restless presence. The front door opened before the SUV stopped. A woman in her 60s stood beneath the entry chandelier wearing a dark dress, practical shoes, and an expression that could discipline weather. "Roman," she said, "the nursery is ready. Thank you, Bertie." Her eyes moved to Mara, then to Ivy, asleep against her. "So this is Mara Ellison." "Yes, ma'am," Mara said. Bertie gave a small, approving nod. "She has manners." "Good. Come in before the lake wind finishes what the rain started." Mara stepped into warmth, wood smoke, and the faint smell of garlic. She had expected cold wealth, marble echoes, rooms too perfect to breathe in. Instead, the house felt lived in. Dark floors worn at the center, family photographs along the staircase, books stacked beside a lamp, a bowl of apples on a side table, a pair of tiny shoes abandoned near the bottom step. Bertie was already issuing instructions. "Dry clothes for Miss Ellison, tea in the nursery, soup in 20 minutes. Roman, if you bleed on my rug, choose another rug. I am not bleeding. Not yet. The night is young." Mara stared. Roman almost smiled. Almost. They carried Ivy upstairs to a nursery painted in soft lake colors with whales along the wall and a nightlight glowing near the crib. Ivy woke when Mara laid her down and immediately began to cry. "No. Mama." Mara sat on the small bed beside the crib and pulled her close. "I'm right here. Stay." Roman stood by the door. Mara felt his gaze before she met it. "I'm staying tonight," she said. She meant it for Ivy. Roman heard it too. Something in his face shifted so small most people would have missed it. Mara did not. Later, after Ivy finally slept, Bertie led Mara to the room beside the nursery. Clothes had been laid out on the bed. Soft black pants, a cream sweater, socks thick enough to survive lake wind. Mara touched the sweater. "This is too nice." Bertie stood in the doorway. "It is clean and it fits. That does not make it mine. For tonight it does." Mara looked at her. "You are very bossy." Bertie's mouth twitched. "That is why this house still stands." After a shower in a bathroom bigger than Mara's kitchen, she came downstairs in borrowed clothes, hair damp, body heavy with exhaustion. She found Roman in the library speaking into his phone near the fireplace. His voice was low and cold. Mara did not understand every name, but she understood enough. The man from the park had no identification. The stuffed rabbit came from a shop in Baton Rouge. The security camera had been disabled remotely. The escape car had already been found burned near an industrial lot. Roman ended the call and stared into the fire. "You should eat," Mara said from the doorway. He did not turn. "Bertie sent you. She strongly suggested I bully you." "That sounds like her." Mara crossed into the room. The library smelled of leather smoke and old paper. Rain struck the windows. The lake moved beyond the glass, invisible but loud. Roman turned then. His gaze moved over the borrowed sweater, her damp hair, her tired face. "I am sorry," he said. "For what?" "For how fast this has become impossible." Mara sat in one of the leather chairs near the fire. "It was impossible when your daughter called me Mama in a restaurant full of men pretending not to stare." A faint breath left him. "That is true." He sat across from her. For a moment, the only sound was the fire. Then Mara said, "Tell me about your world." Roman looked at her. "All of it," she said. "As much as you can without deciding I am breakable." His eyes held hers. "My grandfather unloaded cargo on the river by hand. My father learned there was more money in deciding which cargo moved and which cargo waited. By the time it came to me, we owned routes, warehouses, trucking contracts, security companies, and enough secrets to make judges polite." Mara listened without interrupting. "I have legal companies," Roman continued. "I also have obligations that were never written down." Men owe us. Men fear us. Men come to me when the law is too slow, too expensive, or already bought. Do you hurt people?" He did not look away. Yes. The word was quiet and clean. Mara's fingers tightened on the chair. "Do you hurt innocent people?" "No." "You are sure no one who lives in my world gets to be sure of everything. But I have rules. That is supposed to comfort me." "No," he said. "It is supposed to be the truth." She looked toward the fire. "I am not blind, Roman. I know. I see the darkness." "Yes. I am scared of how easy it is to forget it when you are holding Ivy half asleep with her rabbit tucked under your coat." His face shifted. That reached him. He leaned forward, forearms on his knees. "I knew at the aquarium. Knew what? That if I did not step back, I would start needing the sight of you in my life." Mara's breath caught. Roman's voice lowered. "I did not step back." Rain tapped the windows. The house was quiet above them, full of sleeping children, armed men buried letters and truths too old to stay buried much longer. Mara stood. She did not know why until Roman stood too. For a second they were close enough that she could see the tired red at the edges of his eyes and the small scar near his jaw. "I should be sensible," she whispered. "Yes. You are not supposed to agree. I am trying not to lie to you." Her hand lifted before she gave it permission. Her fingers touched his jaw. Roman went still, not like a predator, but like a man giving her every chance to change her mind. She did not. When he kissed her, it was careful for one breath, then not careful at all. It carried grief and restraint and weeks of unsaid things. His hand settled at her waist, steady but not trapping. Mara gripped the front of his shirt and kissed him back because there was no honest way to pretend she did not want to. Then the house alarm sounded. One sharp tone. Roman broke the kiss instantly. His phone was already in his hand when Cal's voice came through the speaker system. Outer gate breached. 2 vehicles. No clearance. Roman's face changed before Mara could breathe. The man who had kissed her vanished. The commander remained. He looked at her. "Get Ivy." Mara ran. Mara reached the nursery just as Ivy woke. The little girl sat up in the soft amber glow of the nightlight curls, wild eyes wide and empty with sleep. For 1 second she looked at Mara as if she could not understand why the house had changed around her. Then another alarm tone sounded. Not loud. Sharp. Final. Ivy's face crumpled. "Mama!" Mara crossed the room and gathered her up. "I've got you, sweetheart. I've got you." Ivy wrapped both arms around her neck. Her small body shook so hard Mara could feel every tremor through the borrowed sweater. Somewhere below them, men moved across the house with controlled urgency. Doors locked. Radios cracked. A voice called a name. Another answered from far away. Mara heard Roman in the hall. "West side gate. Cal take 2 men around the service road. Nobody fires unless they cross the second line." His voice was low, calm, terrible. He appeared in the nursery doorway with a gun in his hand. Mara stopped breathing for half a second. She had known, of course. Some quiet part of her had always known the darkness around Roman was not only rumor, not only money, not only men in suits standing too close to exits. Still seeing him there with rain dampening his hair, his shirt open at the throat from her hands, and a weapon held low at his side, made the truth impossible to soften. Father. Lover. King of something violent. Roman looked at Ivy first. His face changed. "Hey, little bird," Ivy whimpered. "Daddy." He stepped inside and crouched in front of her. The gun stayed angled toward the floor. His other hand came up slowly, gently, and touched her cheek. "You stay with Mara." "No, I know." His voice dropped lower. but I need you to be brave for a little while." Ivy buried her face in Mara's shoulder. Roman looked at Mara. "Bathroom. No windows. Lock the door." Mara moved before fear could root her to the floor. The nursery bathroom was pale tile soft towels, a tiny wooden stool beneath the sink, and a small nightlight shaped like a whale. Mara locked the door and sat on the floor with Ivy in her lap. Outside, the house tightened around them. Footsteps passed fast in the hall. A door slammed below. Tires screamed against wet gravel. Then came a heavy impact that shuddered through the floor. Ivy began to cry. Not loud, broken, breathless. That made it worse. Mara pressed a kiss to her hair. "Listen to me. You are with me. You are safe with me." "Mama, stay." "I'm staying." Another crash came from outside. Metal, maybe? Glass? Mara closed her eyes for 1 second and pulled Ivy closer. Then she began to hum. She did not choose the song. It rose from somewhere old and aching. A slow lullaby Nora used to sing when thunder rolled over their apartment, and Mara was small enough to believe the sky could break. Ivy's crying hitched. Mara kept humming. The child's body slowly stopped fighting the sound. Beyond the door, Roman's voice cut through the hall. "Alive. I want him alive." The words turned Mara's blood cold. Minutes stretched. The quiet that followed was worse than the noise. Mara held Ivy so tightly her arms ached. She whispered into the child's curls until the words stopped meaning anything and became only rhythm. "I'm here. Daddy is here. Nobody gets to take you. Nobody gets to scare you tonight." A soft knock came at the bathroom door. 3 taps. Roman's voice followed. "It's me." Mara stood carefully with Ivy still clinging to her and unlocked the door. Roman stood in the nursery breathing hard. Rain clung to his hair. His sleeves were pushed up. There was a dark smear near his wrist that might have been mud. It was not mud. Mara did not ask. His eyes moved over Ivy first, then Mara, counting every visible breath. "What happened?" she asked. "Stolen SUV through the outer gate. 2 men armed. They did not reach the house." "Are they dead?" "One is." The answer was quiet, and the other Roman looked toward the hall, alive. There was no mercy in the way he said it. Mara adjusted Ivy against her shoulder. "Roman." His eyes came back to her. "She is safe," Mara said. His jaw tightened. "He came for my daughter." "I know. He came for her in her bed." "I know." His voice dropped. "Then you know mercy is not my first language." Ivy stirred against Mara's neck. Roman heard it too. He closed his eyes once, then opened them, changed. Not gentler. Controlled. He stepped closer and touched Ivy's hair. "You did good, little bird." Ivy peeked at him through wet lashes. "Bad men." Roman's face cracked at the edges. "Yes. Gone. Yes." She looked at Mara. "Mama song." Mara's heart twisted. Roman looked at her. "What song, my grandmother's?" The words seemed to land somewhere deeper than either of them expected. Later, when Ivy finally slept again, Mara found Roman in the library. Dawn had begun to gray the windows. The storm had passed, but the lake still moved beyond the glass, restless and black. Roman stood by the fireplace, one hand braced on the mantel, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. His knuckles were bruised. Mara stopped in the doorway. "Did you hurt him?" Roman did not turn. "Yes." "Did you kill him?" "No." She stepped inside. "Because of me." Because Ivy was upstairs. It was honest, not comforting. She came closer. "Did he talk?" Roman turned then. He looked older in the early light. Not much. He had no identification. The SUV was stolen. The plates were switched. His phone was burned clean except for one call routed through a shell company. Julian connected to him. Mara swallowed. Roman's voice went flat. I should have killed him. No. Mara, if you kill him, Julian wins. Roman gave a humorless breath. Julian wins if he keeps breathing. No. Julian wins if Ivy grows up learning that truth always ends in blood. For a moment, Roman said nothing. The fire snapped. Mara watched him fight something older than grief. Something built into him by fathers, streets, docks, loyalty, and fear. At last he looked away. You make revenge sound small. It is not small, Mara said. It is heavy. That does not mean you have to carry it into every room Ivy sleeps in. Roman's hand closed into a fist on the mantel. I do not know how to be clean. I did not ask you to be clean. He looked at her. I am asking you to choose what Ivy sees when she looks back at this. That landed. Hard. By mid-morning, the estate had become a machine. Men came and went. Calls passed in low voices. Cal stood in Roman's office with a tablet security footage, names, routes, and license plate fragments. Bertie moved through the chaos carrying coffee and issuing orders as if armed guards were just another kind of badly trained nephew. Tessa arrived before noon in a taxi that Roman's men had clearly followed. She stormed through the front door with Mara's old duffel bag in one hand and a cardboard box in the other. Mara Ellison, if you ever vanish into a mafia mansion again without giving me enough detail to write on a missing person report, I will haunt you while alive. Mara met her in the entry hall and hugged her hard. Tessa stiffened for 1 second, then hugged back. You okay? She whispered. No. Good. Honest answer. Tessa pulled away and glanced around the estate. This house has more exits than my hospital. Probably more people with guns, too. Comforting. Bertie appeared from nowhere. You must be Tessa. Tessa eyed her. You must be the woman running this place. I am the woman keeping it from becoming a circus with blood on the rugs. I respect that. Bertie nodded once. Then you may stay. Tessa blinked. Was I being evaluated constantly? Mara almost laughed, but then Tessa lifted the cardboard box. I brought what you asked for, your grandmother's things from the closet. Mara's breath caught. They took the box to a small sitting room near the back of the house. Roman did not follow until Mara looked at him and nodded. Even then, he stood near the door, giving her space. The box smelled like dust cedar and faint lavender. Mara opened it slowly. Inside were pieces of Nora's life. A folded church program, a hospital badge from Mercy General, a pair of white nursing shoes wrapped in tissue, old photographs, a recipe card for gumbo in Nora's neat handwriting. Mara touched each thing like it could bruise. At the bottom, beneath a stack of old magazines, was a small blue notebook held shut by an elastic band. Mara opened it. The pages were full of dates, initials, and short notes. Most looked ordinary at first. Shift times, patient room numbers, medication reminders. But several entries were marked with a tiny star. SV. Mara stopped. Roman stepped closer. Tessa leaned over her shoulder. Serena Vale, Tessa said. Mara turned the page. One line stood out. Ask Elaine if she remembers the dosage. Another line. Price changed order after objection. Another. Baby cried until lavender song. Mara's fingers went cold. Elaine, she whispered. Tessa pointed to the next page. There was a full name written at the top. Elaine Porter, retired nurse, Baton Rouge. Roman was already reaching for his phone. Mara looked up. No. He paused. I come with you, she said. Roman's jaw flexed. Mara. No. Nora was my grandmother. If someone is carrying the truth she tried to tell, I hear it myself. Tessa crossed her arms. And I'm coming because apparently nobody in this house understands basic emotional supervision. Roman looked at Cal, who stood in the doorway. Cal only said, "Baton Rouge is 2 hours." Bertie appeared behind him. Then someone packed sandwiches. Men with guns always forget people need food. Elaine Porter lived in a small white house outside Baton Rouge, tucked behind a chain-link fence and 2 overgrown rose bushes. The porch sagged slightly. Wind chimes hung near the door, moving in the humid breeze with a soft, tired sound. Elaine was in her late 70s, thin as a reed with silver hair braided down her back and eyes that sharpened the moment she saw Roman. "No," she said through the screen door. Mara stepped forward before Roman could speak. "Mrs. Porter, my name is Mara Ellison. Nora Ellison was my grandmother." The old woman's face changed. Not softened. Opened. Nora's girl. "Yes." Elaine looked past her at Roman, then at Cal near the car, then back at Mara. "You shouldn't have come here." Mara's voice was gentle. "I think Nora wanted someone to." Elaine's hand trembled on the door latch. Inside the house smelled like lemon polish and old medicine. Family photographs lined the walls. A television murmured in the next room with the volume low. Elaine brought them sweet tea with too much sugar and set the glasses on coasters as if manners could hold fear away. Roman remained standing until Elaine pointed to a chair. "You make me nervous looming like that." To Mara's surprise, Roman sat. Elaine looked at him for a long moment. "You look like your father." Roman said nothing. "That is not a compliment." "I know." Elaine turned to Mara. "Nora was the best nurse in that hospital. Stubborn as stone. Kind as Sunday dinner. She saw too much and wrote down more than she should have." "What happened the night Serena died?" Mara asked. Elaine's eyes moved to the window. For a moment Mara thought she would refuse. Then Elaine began. "Mrs. Vale came in already frightened. Not hysterical, not weak. Frightened in the way women get when their body knows something before doctors admit it. She kept asking for Nora because Nora had been with her during earlier visits." Roman's hands tightened on his knees. "Serena asked for Nora," he said. Elaine nodded. She trusted her. Mara held very still. Dr. Price was called in after midnight. Elaine continued. "There was an order for medication. Nora challenged it. Said the timing was wrong. Said the dosage did not match the treatment plan. Price told her to stay in her lane." Tessa's mouth tightened. Elaine's voice thinned. Nora documented the objection. "I saw her do it." Serena worsened not long after. The room became chaos. Too many people. Too many voices. "Then someone told us to take the baby out," Ivy Mara said. Elaine looked at her. "Yes. Little thing. Red-faced. Angry at the world. Nora took her to the nursery. She held that baby for hours. Roman's face had gone colorless in the way stone loses warmth. Elaine looked at him. "You were in the hall. I remember. You had blood on your shirt. You kept asking if your wife could hear you." Roman looked down. Mara felt the room tilt around that image. Elaine continued more softly. "Nora held your daughter and sang to her. Same song over and over. She smelled like that lavender soap she always wore. She told the baby, 'You are safe, little one. You are safe.'" Mara stopped breathing. The song. The lavender. The words. Ivy had not remembered Mara's face. She had remembered a pattern, a scent, a rhythm. Safety passed from grandmother to granddaughter like a flame protected by both hands. Roman looked at Mara. "She was not calling you Serena," he said quietly. Mara's eyes burned. "No. She was calling for the first person who made her feel safe." Elaine covered her mouth with one trembling hand. Nora tried to report it. She wrote letters. She made copies. Then hospital administration told her she was confused from grief. A week later, she was transferred. 2 months later, she left Mercy General. "She never told me," Mara whispered. "She was protecting you," Elaine said. "That is what women like Nora do. They swallow storms and call it dinner." On the drive back, nobody spoke for a long time. The Louisiana highway stretched beneath a sky heavy with clouds. Trees blurred past. Rain threatened, but did not fall. Roman sat beside Mara this time, not across from her. Ivy was safe at the estate with Bertie, but Mara could feel the absence of the child like a hand missing from hers. Roman finally said, "I should have known." Mara looked at him. "You were grieving. I was Roman Vale. You were a man whose wife died while his daughter was being born." His jaw tightened. "I should have known everything. No one knows everything when they are breaking." He turned toward the window. Mara reached across the space between them and touched his hand. Not to fix him, not to forgive the world, only to remind him he was still in it. He turned his palm up and held on. That night, Roman found Dr. Malcolm Price. Not in a hospital, not in a house, in a private rehab facility on the Florida coast, registered under a false name and paid through a trust that connected back to Julian Carver's network. Roman wanted to go alone. Mara knew it before he said it. He stood in the library with Cal and 2 other men. His coat buttoned, his face empty in the way it got when violence had already become a decision. "I am coming," Mara said. "No. Yes, this is not a conversation. It is if you want me to still be here when you get back." The room went still. Cal looked down at his tablet as if it had become fascinating. Roman's eyes stayed on Mara. "You do not know what I may have to do. I know exactly what you want to do. And if you kill him before he talks, Julian wins." Roman stepped closer. "Do not use my daughter against me. I am not. I am using the truth. Ivy needs answers more than your rage needs blood." For a moment, he looked like he hated her. Then the hate collapsed into something more painful. "Fine," he said. They did not take Mara into the room where Price was held. Roman would not allow that much. But she sat in the hallway outside the private office of a closed coastal clinic while rain battered the windows, and Roman questioned the man who had signed Serena Vale's death papers. She heard voices through the wall. Roman's low, Price's shaking. Cal's occasional sentence calm and precise. Then a chair scraped. Price began to cry. Mara closed her eyes. When the door opened an hour later, Roman came out first. His face was frighteningly calm. Mara stood. What did he say? Roman looked at her, and for the first time that night the calm broke. He did it. The words fell between them. He admitted Julian paid his gambling debts, admitted the medication order, admitted he changed the chart after Serena died, admitted Nora filed an objection. Mara pressed a hand to her mouth. Roman continued, voice roughening. Julian told him it was only meant to destabilize her, enough to delay signatures, enough to put control of the trust into dispute. Price panicked when she crashed. Julian told him to bury it. Mara felt sick. Serena died for paperwork. Roman's eyes went dark, for land, for docks, for money that already belonged to men who had too much. His hands were shaking, just slightly, but she saw. He turned away before she could touch him. I should have protected her. Mara stepped closer. She should never have needed protection from the people around her. Roman braced one hand against the wall. He stood beside me at her funeral. I know. He held Ivy. Mara's stomach twisted. Roman's voice dropped until it barely sounded human. I let him touch my child. Mara moved in front of him. Look at me. He did not. Roman. His eyes found hers. You are still here, she said. Ivy is still here. Serena's truth is still here. Do not hand Julian the rest of your life because he already stole part of it. His breathing changed. For one moment he leaned his forehead against hers. Not a kiss. Not comfort, exactly. A man at the edge of himself borrowing steadiness from the only person brave enough to stand close. 2 days later, Julian Carver invited Roman to a charity gala at the Hotel Marceau in the French Quarter. The invitation came printed on thick ivory paper, polite, elegant, a declaration of war wearing cologne. Roman read it once and set it on the table. No. Mara watched him. No, you won't go. No, he does not get a public room. The way he said it told her everything. You want a private one. Roman did not answer. Mara stepped closer. Are you going there for Serena or for yourself? His eyes lifted slowly. Careful. No. I am done being careful with the parts of you that want to burn the world and call it love. Roman's voice went low. He killed my wife. Yes. He tried to reach Ivy. Yes. I can end him. And then what? Mara asked. Ivy grows up visiting you behind glass? Or worse, grows up in a house where everyone knows her father killed a man and nobody says his name. Roman turned away. Mara followed. I am not asking you to forgive him. I would never. I am asking you not to become the kind of man Julian always believed you were. That struck. Roman went still. Mara stepped closer. Serena died trying to pull you out of his world. Do not honor her by proving him right. His jaw worked once. I want him dead. I know. Part of me needs it. No, Mara whispered. Part of you is starving for justice and only knows the taste of revenge. The room was silent except for the rain against the windows. Then Roman looked toward the nursery where Ivy's voice floated faintly through the hall as Bertie read her a bedtime story. Daddy Ivy called sleepily. Roman closed his eyes. That one word did what no threat could. When he opened them, the decision had cost him something. What do you need me to do? Mara asked. Roman looked at Cal. Cal straightened. We give the district attorney the recording from Price Elaine's statement. Nora's letter, the transfer records, and the hospital chart alterations. Roman's mouth tightened. And Roman Vale walks into a room wearing a wire. Cal did not blink. Yes. Mara expected Roman to refuse. Instead, he looked at her. You asked me to choose law. I asked you to choose Ivy. That is worse. It usually is. The Hotel Marceau glowed under chandelier's gold leaf and old French Quarter arrogance. Rain streaked the tall windows. Music floated over the ballroom's soft jazz beneath the clink of glasses and expensive laughter. Mara arrived on Roman's arm in a dark green dress Bertie had chosen and Tessa had approved only after threatening to stab anyone who commented on the neckline. Roman wore black. Not a tuxedo. Not quite. Something sharper. Mara could feel the tension beneath his stillness. A wire rested under his shirt. Federal agents were in the room. The district attorney stood near the bar, pretending to discuss wine. Cal moved through the crowd with 2 men Mara trusted only because Roman did. Julian Carver stood near the center of the room like a saint painted by a liar. Silver hair, warm smile, hand on a donor's shoulder. He looked like old money, gentle manners, and clean hands. Mara hated him immediately. Julian saw Roman and smiled wider. Roman, he said, opening his arms slightly. You look tired, son. Roman stopped in front of him. Dead women have a way of keeping men awake. Julian's smile did not vanish. It thinned. His eyes flicked to Mara. And this must be Miss Ellison. I have heard so much. Mara met his gaze. Not enough, apparently. For 1 second, Julian's charm slipped. Roman's hand touched the small of Mara's back. A warning. Or support. Maybe both. Julian chuckled softly. Fire. I see the appeal. Roman's voice cooled. Walk with me. Julian looked amused. Still giving orders in rooms that do not belong to you? Roman leaned closer. Every room belongs to someone afraid to say no. Julian's smile returned. Your father would be proud. No, Roman said. He would be impressed. Serena would be proud. That name changed the air. Julian set down his glass. They walked to a balcony overlooking the rain-wet quarter. Mara remained just inside the doors, close enough to see too far to hear every word. Cal stood across the ballroom. The district attorney shifted near the bar. Roman and Julian faced each other beneath the balcony lights. Mara watched Roman speak. Slowly, carefully. She saw Julian's posture change as Roman named the trust assets, the Portland, the hospital records. Nora's letter, Elaine Porter, Dr. Malcolm Price. Julian laughed once. Then Roman said something that made him stop. Mara moved closer. Julian's voice carried through the rain. Serena was going to ruin everything your father built. Roman stood still. She was going to save me from it. Julian stepped closer. She made you weak. Roman's hand curled. Mara saw it. So did Julian. There he is, Julian whispered. There is the boy your father left me to sharpen. Roman moved. Only 1 step. But Mara felt the whole room lean toward violence. Then Roman stopped. His eyes shifted past Julian through the glass toward Mara. No, not just Mara. Toward the thought of Ivy. Toward Serena. Toward Nora's letter. Toward every dead woman who had tried to put truth into the hands of men who preferred blood. Roman stepped back. No, he said. Julian blinked. Roman's voice was quiet. There I was. The balcony doors opened. Agents moved in. Julian turned once fast enough to show the animal beneath the silk. For the first time all night he looked afraid. Roman did not touch him. Not when they took Julian's arms. Not when Julian cursed Serena's name. Not when he looked at Mara and said, You have no idea what kind of man he is. Mara stepped beside Roman. Yes, she said. I do. Julian was led through the ballroom in front of donors, politicians, judges, and men who had once taken his calls in private. Cameras flashed outside before the hotel doors closed behind him. Roman stood under the chandelier, untouched and ruined. Mara took his hand. His fingers were cold. He did not look at her until they were outside beneath the hotel awning with rain falling silver over the street. You did it, she said. Roman shook his head. I wanted to kill him. I know. Part of me still does. Mara held his hand tighter. Then let that part be loud. Just don't let it drive. Roman looked down at her. Rain softened the harsh lines of his face. For the first time since she had met him, he did not look like a man in control of the city. He looked like a man who had chosen not to let the city control him. Behind them, sirens faded into the quarter. Ahead of them, Roman's car waited at the curb. Mara stepped closer, her hand still in his. Take me home. Roman's eyes searched hers. To your apartment. She thought of the estate. Ivy asleep in the nursery. Bertie pretending not to worry. Tessa probably raiding the kitchen. Nora's letter resting in a locked file. Serena's name finally spoken where powerful men could hear it. Mara looked at Roman. Roman did not speak for a long moment after Mara said it. to Ivy. The words sat between them in the rain, simple and final, as if some invisible door had opened, and both of them knew walking through it would change the shape of everything behind them. Roman looked at her hand, still wrapped around his. Then he nodded once. The ride back to the estate was quiet. New Orleans slid past the windows in wet streaks of gold and shadow. The city looked softer after midnight, but Mara knew better now. Soft things could hide teeth. Beautiful streets could hold old sins. Powerful men could stand under chandeliers and talk about charity while dead women waited years for the truth to be spoken. Roman sat beside her, not across from her this time. His shoulder nearly touched hers. He stared out at the rain with the kind of stillness that did not mean peace. Mara knew him well enough now to understand that silence was not always control. Sometimes it was a man holding himself together because there was a child waiting at home who needed him whole. When the SUV turned through the iron gates near Lake Pontchartrain, the estate glowed ahead of them, warm against the black water. Security lights moved over the lawn. The house stood quiet, but not asleep. Bertie opened the front door before the car stopped. She wore a robe over her dress and held a kitchen towel in one hand like a weapon. "Well," she demanded. Roman stepped inside first. "Julian is in custody." Bertie closed her eyes. Only for a second. Then she nodded as if she had been waiting years to put that fact in its proper place. "Good. Soup is warm." Mara almost laughed. It came out shaky. Tessa appeared at the top of the stairs in borrowed pajamas, her curls a disaster, one hand braced against the banister. "You both look terrible," she said. "That means nobody died who matters." Roman looked up at her. "No one in this house." Tessa studied him for a moment, then nodded. Ivy woke twice. She asked for Mara. "Bertie told her you were bringing her home." Home. Mara felt the word move through her body. Roman turned toward the stairs. Mara followed him up. The nursery door was open a few inches. Soft light spilled into the hallway. Ivy was asleep in the small bed beside her crib, one arm wrapped around her gray rabbit curls, spread across the pillow. Her cheeks were flushed from crying. Her little mouth was parted, her breathing steady. Roman stopped in the doorway. Mara stood beside him. For a while, neither of them entered. The room smelled like baby shampoo, clean cotton, and lavender from the little sachet Bertie had placed near the dresser after learning about Nora. On the wall, painted whales floated through pale blue water, calm and slow, as if nothing cruel had ever existed beyond the nursery door. Roman's voice was rough when he finally spoke. "I almost did not come back as the man she needs." Mara looked at him. "But you did." His jaw tightened. "I wanted Julian's blood." "I know. I still do. I know that too." He looked at her then, and the tiredness in his eyes made him seem younger and older at once. "What does that make me?" Mara stepped closer. "Human. Dangerous. Trying." His gaze moved back to Ivy. "Trying may not be enough." "No," Mara said softly. "But it is where enough begins." Ivy stirred. Her lashes fluttered open. For one sleepy second she looked confused. Then she saw them. "Mama," she whispered. Mara went to her immediately and knelt beside the bed. "I'm here." Ivy reached for her, then reached for Roman too. "Daddy?" Roman crossed the room and sat on the edge of the bed. He touched Ivy's hair with the back of his fingers. "Hi, little bird." Ivy looked between them, still half asleep. "Bad man gone?" Roman's face tightened. "Yes." "Daddy stay?" "Yes." "Mama stay?" Mara looked at Roman, then back at Ivy. "Yes, baby. I'm staying tonight." Ivy seemed to accept that as the only answer the world needed. She closed her eyes again, one hand holding Mara's fingers, the other holding Roman's sleeve. Mara stayed kneeling until her legs ached. Roman stayed sitting until dawn touched the curtains. The truth broke open the next morning. By 8, every major station in Louisiana was talking about Julian Carver. By 10, federal agents had searched 3 offices, 2 private storage units, and a medical archive connected to Mercy General. By noon, Dr. Malcolm Price's recorded confession had become the story no one could bury. Roman did not turn on the television at first. Bertie did. She stood in the family room with the remote in her hand and dared anyone to argue. A reporter stood outside the courthouse, rain flattening her hair as she spoke into the camera. Julian Carver, longtime businessman and philanthropist, has been taken into federal custody in connection with a reopened investigation into the death of Serena Vale, wife of Gulf Coast shipping magnate Roman Vale. Sources confirm that medical records, financial transfers, and witness testimony have led prosecutors to examine allegations of conspiracy, medical fraud, obstruction, and murder for hire. Mara stood near the sofa with Ivy on her hip. Roman stood by the fireplace, one hand against the mantel. When the reporter said Serena's name, Ivy lifted her head. Mama Serena. The room went still. Mara felt Roman stop breathing. Ivy looked at Mara, waiting. Mara swallowed and brushed a curl from the child's forehead. Yes, baby. Mama Serena. Ivy touched the screen with one small finger. Serena's photo appeared beside Roman's older one. She was smiling, one hand over her pregnant belly, eyes bright with a future she never got to hold. Ivy studied the photo. Pretty. Roman turned away. Mara saw his shoulders rise once. Yes, Mara whispered. She was very pretty. Ivy touched Mara's cheek. Mama. Mara's eyes burned. Only if you want that, she almost said. But Ivy was not asking permission. She was naming the world as she understood it. Mara held her closer. Yes. Ivy rested her head against Mara's shoulder. Mama Mara. Roman walked out of the room before anyone could see his face. Mara found him later in the library. He was standing at the window looking toward the lake. Morning light turned the water silver. A stack of files sat open on the desk behind him. Julian's companies, hospital records, names Mara did not know, men Roman had known for years, men who had smiled at funerals and signed contracts with blood still drying beneath the ink. Mara stopped near the doorway. You do not have to do all of it today. Roman did not turn. If I stop moving, I hear him. Julian Serena. Mara came closer. What does she say? Roman looked down at his hands. That she was right. Mara stood beside him. Outside wind moved across the lake. Roman's voice was low. She wanted me to sell off the dirty parts. Not all at once. She was not naive. She knew what my family was. But she wanted distance. Clean contracts. Real oversight. A life where our child did not grow up learning which rooms were safe by counting guns. Mara looked at him. And you told her that I could not turn a ship while men were still loading it. Did you believe that I wanted to? He turned from the window. Julian understood something I did not. Serena was patient, but she was not weak. She would have kept pushing. One asset at a time. One contract. One route. One secret brought into daylight. She would have changed the shape of everything. Mara's throat tightened. So now you do it. Roman gave a faint, humorless smile. You say that as if men will simply allow it. No, Mara said. I say it because your daughter is downstairs learning new words, and one day she will ask what you did after you learned the truth. Roman looked at her for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and called Cal. By sunset, Men who had once moved through Roman's house like ghosts were sitting in his office with pale faces and tight mouths. Mara did not attend the meeting. She did not need to. She heard enough through the closed door. Contracts would be cut. Certain routes would be closed. Julian's network would be exposed where it touched Serena's death. Several men were dismissed before dinner. One shouted. The sound ended quickly. Not with violence. With Roman's voice. Low. Final. This house is not built for cowards hiding behind loyalty. Later, Cal found Roman in the hall outside the nursery. Men are saying you have gone soft, Cal said. Roman watched Ivy through the open door. She was sitting on the rug while Mara read from the whale book. Ivy kept interrupting to correct Mara with total seriousness, though half the words still came out wrong. Roman's face softened before he caught himself. Good, he said. Cal waited. Roman added, Let them misunderstand the difference between soft and careful. Cal nodded once. That will make some men brave. Roman looked at him. Then, we will learn their names. Mara did not move into Roman's life like a woman being carried across a threshold. She stayed because she chose to. The difference mattered. She went back to class the next week with 2 security cars following at a distance she had negotiated down from unbearable to irritating. She kept her shifts at Ruby's for another month because walking away too quickly felt too much like being swallowed by Roman's world. Ruby watched her wipe down the counter one slow afternoon and said, You know you don't have to prove you are still poor to stay decent. Mara looked up. I know. Do you? Mara smiled faintly. I'm learning. Ruby poured coffee into 2 mugs and slid one toward her. That man love you? Mara glanced toward the window where one of Roman's men stood across the street pretending to care about a newspaper. Yes, Ruby nodded. You love him? Mara took a breath. Yes. Ruby studied her for a long moment. Then make sure he knows love is not a leash. He does. Ruby snorted. Men know what women teach twice. Mara carried that home with her. That evening, she told Roman she wanted to start a foundation in Nora's name. Not a charity with glossy photos and rich people clapping for themselves, but something useful. Therapy support for children affected by violence. Legal help for families silenced by hospitals. Emergency grants for women who had been told to endure quietly. Roman listened without interrupting. When she finished, he said, I will fund it. No dirty money. His expression did not change, but his eyes did. You think I would insult Nora that way? I think you are still learning where the lines are. For a moment, the old Roman might have taken offense. This Roman only nodded. Then you draw them. I will meet them. Mara looked at him, surprised by the ache behind her ribs. That easy no, he said. But simple. Weeks passed. Not peacefully. Peace was too clean a word. There were court dates, depositions, reporters outside gates, men Roman no longer trusted calling from blocked numbers, hospital administrators resigning before they could be fired, Dr. Price entering protective custody, Julian refusing to confess further, then confessing too much when the evidence trapped him. There were also mornings. Ivy eating pancakes with syrup in her hair. Tessa falling asleep on Roman's expensive sofa after a night shift and daring anyone to move her. Bertie teaching Mara where the good towels were hidden. Roman standing in the kitchen at midnight barefoot, trying to cut grapes into quarters with the attention of a man disarming a bomb. Mara laughed at him. They are grapes, Roman. They are a choking hazard. You look more relaxed facing federal agents. Federal agents do not fit inside a toddler's windpipe. She kissed his cheek. He went still every time she did that, as if some part of him still did not trust tenderness to happen without cost. One clear Sunday morning, Roman took Mara and Ivy to Metairie Cemetery. The sky was pale blue after a night of rain. The white tombs stood in long, quiet rows, their stone faces washed clean. Ivy wore a yellow dress and carried roses nearly too big for her arms. Serena's family tomb stood beneath a live oak. Roman stopped several feet away. For a long moment he did not move. Mara touched his arm. "We can wait." He shook his head. "No." Ivy walked forward first. She placed one yellow rose against the stone. "Hi, Mama Serena." Roman closed his eyes. Mara stayed back, giving him room. Roman stepped closer to the tomb. His voice, when it came, was low and raw. "You were right. About the business. About me. About what our daughter deserved." Wind moved through the oak leaves. "I am sorry I learned so slowly." Ivy leaned against his leg. Roman looked down and picked her up. "She laughs now," he said to the stone. "She talks. She argues about pancakes. She says no like she inherited it from both of us." Mara smiled through tears. Roman looked at Serena's name. "She is safe." Ivy rested the second rose beside the first. "Bye, Mama Serena." Afterward, they drove to the smaller cemetery where Nora was buried. Mara carried lavender. The grass was damp beneath her shoes. Nora's stone was simple. Her name, her dates, a short line from the Psalms she had loved. Mara knelt and placed the lavender down. "I found the letter," she whispered. Her voice shook. "You tried. You tried when no one listened. You held Ivy before I ever met her. You gave her the first safe thing she remembered." Ivy crouched beside Mara and touched the stone. "Safe," she said. Mara covered her mouth. Roman stood behind them, one hand on Ivy's shoulder, the other resting lightly at Mara's back. For the first time since the story began, the silence did not feel like something stolen. It felt like rest. The proposal came in City Park beneath the same old oak where Ivy had laughed for the first time. Roman should have looked calm. He had faced armed men with less visible concern. Instead, he stood beneath the branches in a dark suit, one hand in his pocket, watching Mara approach like she might turn around and save him from himself. Mara noticed immediately. "You look like you are about to negotiate with God." Roman breathed out. "Worse." Ivy ran from behind the tree in a yellow coat, holding a small velvet box with both hands. "Daddy's scared." Mara stopped. Roman looked at his daughter. "Betrayed by my own blood." Ivy grinned. Tessa stood a few feet away with Ruby and Bertie, all three pretending they had not arranged the entire thing. Mara looked at Roman. "What did you do?" Roman took the box from Ivy and lowered himself to one knee. The park seemed to quiet around them. Ducks moved across the water. A street musician played somewhere near the path. Spanish moss stirred above them like gray silk. Roman looked up at Mara. "Mara Ellison, you walked into my life carrying water glasses and somehow became the safest place my daughter knew. You looked at the worst parts of me and never confused them for the whole of me. You taught me that truth can be harder than violence and that love is not control, not possession, not fear dressed up as protection." Mara's eyes filled. Roman's voice roughened. "I cannot promise you a simple life. I do not have one to give. But I promise you truth before comfort, choice before control, and a home where no child has to be afraid of silence." Ivy whispered loudly, "Say yes." Mara laughed through tears. "Yes." Roman slipped the ring onto her finger with hands that were steady only because he forced them to be. When he stood, Mara kissed him first. For once, nobody dangerous interrupted. The wedding took place at the Lake Pontchartrain estate in late spring. Not because the house was grand, though it was. Not because Roman wanted to impress anyone, though half the state would have attended if invited. They married there because it was the place where fear had tried to enter and failed. It was where Ivy had cried in Mara's arms, where Roman had chosen not to become only vengeance, where a house built for protection had slowly become a home. The aisle was lined with yellow roses for Serena and lavender white flowers for Nora. Ruby cried openly and threatened anyone who mentioned it. Tessa stood beside Mara in a dark blue dress, holding tissues in one hand and glaring at Roman with professional commitment. "If you hurt her," Tessa said, before the ceremony. "I know where arteries are," Roman answered calmly. "I believe you." Bertie supervised the flowers, the food, the musicians, and the weather with equal suspicion. Cal danced badly with Ruby at the reception. Ruby told him he moved like a filing cabinet. Cal said, "A secure filing cabinet." She laughed so hard she had to sit down. Ivy walked down the aisle carrying the rings in a tiny velvet pouch. Halfway there, she stopped to study a butterfly resting on one of the chairs. Everyone waited. No one rushed her. Roman watched his daughter with a softness that no longer looked like pain trying to disguise itself. Mara saw it and knew. The man at the altar was still dangerous, still complicated, still marked by a life that would not wash clean in one season of love. But he was present, he was choosing, he was learning how to stand in the light without reaching for a shadow. When Mara reached him, Roman took her hands like they were something sacred and breakable and strong all at once. His vows were quiet enough that only the front rows heard every word. "You did not save me by making me good," he said. "You saved me by making me want to be better where it mattered." Mara's voice trembled when it was her turn. "You gave me a family I did not expect. But Ivy gave me the first invitation. I am not here because I was swept away. I am here because I chose this house, this child, this man, and the truth that love can grow in places grief tried to claim." Ivy interrupted from the front row. "Mama pretty." Everyone laughed. Roman smiled. A real smile. It changed his whole face. That night, music drifted through the garden. Lanterns glowed in the trees. The lake lay dark beyond the lawn, calmer than Mara had ever seen it. She stood on the balcony in her wedding dress with Ivy on her hip. The child was sleepy, heavy, and warm against her. Roman came up behind them and rested one hand gently at Mara's waist. Below, Tessa danced with a cousin whose name she claimed she did not remember. Ruby argued with the caterer while eating a second slice of cake. Bertie stood near the doors, pretending not to smile. Cal watched the perimeter out of habit, then looked toward the music as if considering another dangerous attempt at dancing. Mara leaned back against Roman. For a while they said nothing. The silence was full now, full of names spoken at graves, full of letters found, full of a child's first words, full of the dead who were not erased and the living who had decided to stay. Ivy lifted her head from Mara's shoulder and looked out over the estate. "Home," she whispered. Mara looked at Roman. Roman looked at his daughter. Then Mara kissed Ivy's temple. "Yes, baby," she said softly. "Home." The camera would have pulled back then if anyone had been watching from far away, back from the balcony, back from the glowing windows, back over the garden where laughter rose into the warm Louisiana night, back over the black water of Lake Pontchartrain, back toward New Orleans, where music still moved through old streets, where secrets still slept beneath beautiful rooms, where danger and love sometimes wore the same face, until a child spoke one word and changed everything. The story did not end in silence. It ended with Ivy's voice, soft, certain, alive.